Welcome to Business and Life Advice with Ataande Advisors. Today we're in Nairobi and I'm speaking with Adam, who moved here from Canada, runs a business. He has a CFO company and he also runs a farm in Malawi. So there's a lot we're going to talk about today, but first I would love for you to introduce yourself, Adam, and share a bit about yourself.
Great, thank you so much. So my name is Adam Camenzuli, so originally from Canada, rural Ontario. And I first came to Tanzania back in 2010, where I worked for a Canadian charity doing work with street youth. So we would teach street youth about business, help them start their own small businesses, and then, fund them. And so that's what I did as my first job after university. Then I went back to Canada, did my CFA, worked at a bank. Wasn't for me. So I quit my job at the bank, and everybody thought I was crazy, including my family, right? But what really triggered it was we had this idea to start a solar company to address the lack of light and power across the continent. So Tanzania obviously was the starting point for that. And I remember we were ice skating. This was, I guess, around Christmas time in Toronto. And my friend said, "Hey, did you see the news? Did you see the news?" And so we had been chosen to pitch at the Harvard Social Enterprise Conference.
Wow.
This was back, I guess, 2012 or so, 2013. And, of course, there was a big snowstorm, so we managed to get there and pitched, and luckily came in the top 5 of all the different startups. So we knew that we had something. And so shortly after that, I quit my job at the bank and I moved back to Tanzania. And so we ran that solar company for several years around Kilimanjaro and Dar es Salaam, raised a bit of money from Canadian impact investors, from the UN, and from social impact funds. Actually in the US, where I did an incubator program called Fledge in Seattle. And ran that for several years, and then eventually exited that. We reached about 20,000 people with our solar lanterns, shaped like hockey pucks, because of course, Canada. And then I went back to Canada and did some young diplomatic work. So I went to the OECD forum in France as the lead delegate for the Young Diplomats of Canada, and then the G20 Young Entrepreneur Summits across China, Germany, and Japan. So I did some of that type of work for a few years and tried a couple startups, but I never really felt at home. So, I ended up working in Germany in CFO, advisory, CFO, financial consulting. And eventually found a way to pivot back here to the continent, and I was going between Malawi and Kenya. The idea in Malawi being affordable housing. Yeah. And COVID hit, and I was here in Kenya, and so I started CFO consulting. And so that's kind of how it started. Wow. And so most recently I was the CFO for Kasha, which is a technology, pharma, and distribution company in Rwanda, South Africa, and Kenya. And
how's that spelled?
Kasha. Also founded by a Canadian. And we raised $21 million in the Series B. And I left that company this year, and now I'm doing this CFO advisory, fractional CFO consulting.
Wonderful. So you're based out, it seems like Malawi, Tanzania, Kenya, right? Eastern Africa. What drew you to East Africa?
So originally it was a Canadian charity project. It was the Street Kids International, which is the name of the organization. And originally it was that, and it was very easy for me, I think, to come back to Tanzania because at the time, I still do speak Swahili. I understood the context. I understood the movers and shakers and how it all worked. And so it was a very easy fit to go back to Tanzania. And also, it was the diaspora. So my friends in Canada a lot of them are Tanzanian Canadian. And so it's very easy to leverage those social networks and family groups and communities.
Mhm.
So when I first came to Kenya as well, I tapped into that diaspora community.
No, thank you for sharing that. So that connection and staying here, what would you and that community, right? That keeps you here. How has been the process? You talked that you were in a few different organizations and started before you started your own, right? That was doing Series B. What's the difficulty level of, let's say, a non-citizen to get a job in these countries coming from a Western country?
Yeah, great question. And so I think for a lot of folks, that's their biggest concern. It's like, what do I do? How do I enter these markets? And so there are really two routes that I've seen and that are popular for people that I talk to. One of them is to come in as an investor, and you come in with a certain amount of money. So Malawi, it's $50,000 and maybe more soon. Kenya currently, as far as I remember, it's $100,000. So if you have this amount of capital and you invest it and you go through the processes, you can get a work permit or residence permit for a certain period of time. So that's one route. The other one is where you get a company to basically say, I need Adam, he's got these skills that I can't get in the market, therefore I would like to hire him, right? And then they would pay, or the person would pay for that work permit, which in Kenya now is, I think it's several $1,000s per year.
Per year.
Per
So
year.
It's an annual.
Yeah, so you pay every 2 years, but I think it's maybe $5,000 to $10,000 now, depending on how you look at the exchange rate, plus other fees every 2 years for that.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Now let's talk about your CFO business now. Right. So going and how is that starting a business while you're based in East Africa? What was that process?
So Kenya is a great country when it comes to starting a business and the ease of doing business. Of course, there are challenges and there are difficulties in this market, but to start a business, it's online. You do it online, you get the address, you fill out the criteria, everything is done online, and then a couple more steps, and then there you go, you've got a company. Right? And then with that, you start bank accounts and whatever else.
Okay, so similar to Delaware, one of the major places for some where you can do the online registration and have it.
Yeah, it's a bit more, but it's not bad.
Okay.
It's very doable.
That's good to know. Then, so when you're doing business here, are you looking for clients in East Africa? Are you looking for clients in Canada? Are you looking for where are you looking for your clients?
Yeah, so we've only really looked currently for East Africa, and we've had several clients in solar, impact, carbon, real estate, leisure, manufacturing. So a lot of different types of clients, and they've all been in East Africa so far. One West Africa now. So the key is really what you know. So our capabilities as a company are focused here in the region. That's not to say that a CFO, right, and those skills and that acumen for looking at a company from a financial point of view can't be applied to Asia, North America, or Europe. And so I think that could be where we expand, given the size of the markets abroad and in the Middle East as well. So it's because we know the region really well, and from our referrals, we've got a lot of business from East Africa, and none yet from the rest of the world.
Yeah, that's exciting in many ways. One of which is usually expats think about when they come to a country that they still want to earn money or earn income from their origin country, right? Especially if they're coming from a Western country. What you're saying, your experience is you're earning money from within the country or the region that you're currently residing, which is favorable to know that you don't have to depend on outside. You can actually sustain yourself within the region.
Yeah,
okay.
Totally.
So with that in mind, I want to pivot a bit to what you're doing in Malawi, which is very interesting. Were you the one who talked about selling the cow? Yes. So you own a farm, right? You own a farm in Malawi. Can you just talk more about that?
Sure. So we own, we long-term lease a bit of land in Malawi, and on that property, we're looking at doing a hospitality type business, whereby we would have luxury chalets, and cottages, and pools, even a zebra or two, isn't out of the question. And it would allow for high quality and luxury tourism for Malawi.
Okay.
That's really the long-term
I see.
play. But in the interim, for right now, I'm having such a good time farming. And so I'm probably the worst farmer that has ever existed. And we started with maize, of course, tried soya, we tried groundnuts, chilies, beans, and due to climate change, the drought we had last year, we lost all of our beans.
Wow.
Because of the irrigation issues and water, we weren't able to make chilies work. And recently, because it's just a difficult working environment, we had 8 beautiful heifers and a wonderful Boran bull that unfortunately we had to sell to make payroll. That's how it is, right? You have to do what you have to do. And they were really pets. I really miss them. So the thing that we're looking at now is various other opportunities, looking at tomatoes and a bit more precise farming, to be a bit smarter about it.
And that's so interesting. So one of my portfolio companies was speaking yesterday about how he had to sell his car to keep the company going, right? And you said you sold your pets, right? Your cows. So it's not. This is not an environment where you are, what can I say, protected or isolated from issues, but there are ways out, right? Just like there are ways out. So with that said, I think it's really interesting, like the luxury tourism angle, because here in Nairobi, they have a phenomenal space called Giraffe Manor,
Exactly.
which costs a few $1,000s a night and is booked out for a year. You have to book a year in advance in order to get in there. And it's from what it seems like you want to do something similar with zebras, so they can walk up and you can have that experience with them.
Exactly.
I didn't know how much people loved zebras till I took my wife on a safari. You know, they're beautiful creatures.
They're great.
They're beautiful creatures. So, kind of, what's Tanzania, Kenya, Malawi? What would you say is because most people know about Masa Masa, right? And most people know about the Serengeti, right? But I haven't really heard much about tourism in Malawi. So what was the idea behind focusing on that route rather than staying in one of the traditional touristic East African countries?
So I think there's a big opportunity here, and there's an expression in Canada, a hockey expression is, you don't skate to where the puck is, you skate to where the puck is going. The puck's in Nairobi, but it's going to Lilongwe and Blantyre and Mzuzu and all over Malawi. So I truly believe that these wildlife assets that are in Malawi are very much in their early stages of becoming a lot more known and household names. Because you still have the Big Five in Malawi, right? And you can have a different experience. You have a wonderful long lake where you can go to the beach and you can get luxury in some ways, like you can here in Nairobi, but not to that same level. So the tourism industry, I believe, will become a lot more developed over the next few decades. So our pitch, our play is to be front and center at that high quality, luxury, Malawi brand tourism. Okay.
And wow, so that's skates away the puck is. I think Wayne Gretzky used to say that a lot as well. So with that in mind, right, what you're doing in Malawi, for other people who, because I truly believe that you can continue buying as much land as you want, right? But I think it's easier when a pool of people see that opportunity, because it's not just, you have to there has to be an advertising, marketing scheme, governmental scheme created to influence tourists to come in.
Yeah.
Right, at scale, to influence tourists to come in, infrastructure built for the airports to make sure they can handle that, making sure there's enough taxis,
Exactly.
etc., to facilitate move roads, whatnot. With that in mind, the investment you're making, right? Can you explain a little bit about what's a leasehold, or what are the land arrangements for people who are non-Malawi citizens, or maybe even applies to Malawi citizens as well?
Yeah, so there are different land tenures,
Okay.
right? And you have that in Kenya as well, and Tanzania. I'm not an expert, but from what I understand, Kenya allows freehold land tenure,
Okay.
right? Whereby a citizen, I believe, only, in most cases, is only allowed to own freehold land
Okay.
here. And I also believe there's some restriction around agricultural
Okay.
use.
I see.
On the other hand, in Nairobi, for example, a lot of the land is leasehold.
I see.
So leasehold land, I think in most cases, is open for any person,
Okay.
regardless of nationality,
Okay.
to buy. That's my understanding. I'm not an expert.
No worries.
And Malawi is similar in some ways, although the system also allows for the investment center of Malawi,
Okay.
the Malawi Investment and Trade Center, MITC, to designate particular bits of land or allow a one-stop shop for investing in Malawi.
Mhm.
So it's, there are ways that you can do it, or you can partner with local citizens to do partnership models for particular lands, right, or property investments. So I think that we'll be seeing a lot more of that innovation when it comes to how you set up these types of investments, because Malawi is growing. There are challenges, of course, but I think the fundamentals are such that $1 invested in Malawi will yield much more than $1 invested in Kenya or Tanzania or Zambia or Zimbabwe or South Africa or Nigeria. I truly believe that, and that's why we've got these activities, is because we truly believe that the fundamentals are such that you've got economic growth, you've got population growth and urbanization. And so one of the other initiatives that we have as well is a company called Nyumba. And Nyumba in Swahili and Chichewa means house. And so we are setting up a project, very early stages, to do affordable housing in Malawi. The demand for housing is immense around land. The security of title is not as secure as it is here in Kenya or South Africa. So there's an opportunity there and a challenge. The quality of build is not as high as it is here in Kenya or Tanzania, but the demand is there. So by offering high quality, low cost housing, you can really reach the mass market of the demand for people to get housed. And I was in Zimbabwe recently for the Canada-Africa Business Conference, and they asked me, what are the opportunities that you're seeing here in Zimbabwe? And I said, Zimbabwe and the rest of the continent, the biggest challenge, but also the biggest opportunity that we have here is how do we feed and how do we house the next billion people in Africa? That's going to be, I think, the defining challenge of our time.
Yeah, I completely agree. One of the startups I invested in, Boso, that's what they're trying to solve that construction problem, and they're getting construction materials to builders. There's a few things you touched on, and one thing I want to highlight before I move on. It takes a high risk tolerance to go in and be one of the first movers, right? So commendations to you on doing that and building before. It's easy to say skates are where the puck is. you have to hope the puck gets there, especially when you're putting in a lot of money.
Exactly.
And the risk, as you said, with selling accounts, there's a lot of risk that goes on that I don't think people appreciate. So I commend you on that. Following up, I think you said something that I also want. I would love for you to expand on, because I know in our conversation before you mentioned another one. So you talked about the Malawi Investment and Trade Center, right? And that's a great resource for investors or people looking to invest to come help. I'd love you to expand on that, but also in our conversation, you also mentioned something, a similar thing in Tanzania, right? You said, I believe Tanzanian Investment Center.
Yeah.
Is this something that is regular in East Africa or, to your knowledge, something that investors can look to go to? Can you expand on what they do there?
For sure. So typically, a lot of these places will have an investment center. So Zimbabwe has the Zida Center. So as a first stop shop for any foreign investor to come to Zimbabwe or Zida, you set up, and that's how you can incorporate. That's how you can get work permits or residence permits for your expat staff that's there. There are sometimes tax incentives. And so Malawi has it, MITC, Tanzania has it, the TIC, Tanzania Investment Center. And these different organizations are set up, and their mandate is make it easier for foreign direct investment to come here. And so what we're seeing a bit is there's a competition for the foreign money coming in, right? Given some of the conversations we've had today around foreign currency and the various liquidity issues that we have here on the continent for our governments, the investment centers can help us with those particular issues. So for example, you could say, I'm registering this investment, therefore at X period of time, I need to get this investment repatriated. And there, in some cases, we here in Nairobi with the SEZ Traffic at Two Rivers, there are particular incentives whereby some of the withholding tax pressure is reduced so that you can repatriate profits and low interest and dividends at a favorable rate back to the home jurisdiction. So that's really their mandate. So definitely recommend for investors or people coming here, speak to us, right? Because we've been through it several times before. The good, the bad, and the ugly. We've made the mistakes, We've had businesses here, some have failed, right? We've learned our lessons. So I think it's really going to your local Chamber of Commerce, right? So we're starting a Kenya Chamber of Commerce here. There's AmCham, the American Chamber of Commerce. There's a French Chamber of Commerce. There's Business Ireland, Kenya. There's a British Chamber of Commerce. So you have a lot of these chambers of commerce that can help you and guide you on where to go. And hey, you know what? Maybe don't talk to this person, talk to that person. This bank is too much, go to that bank. That lawyer cheats, use this lawyer. Or these accountants are too expensive, go with these folks, they know what they're doing, or whatever. And then also the Trade Center. So I think it's really, the Trade Center is a great resource to help bring about that investment, but also leveraging your network, us, and the Chambers of Commerce.
Thank you. There's so much to dig into there, but I do know I have to let you get back to the conference. So there's a couple of things I would love to ask as we get closer to wrapping up. First, I want to emphasize something before we jump in. So he spoke about the SEZ, right? A special economic zone. That's available in certain countries or cities. And it's a place that the government has set up to give economic incentives to make it easier to invest or do business there. So a lot of times that may be less regulatory oversight or also tax rebates or lower taxes. So that's something to look into. It's in different regions, but investors, business people, that's something to think about when you're looking at investing anywhere in the world. Circling back to, two things. I guess I don't want to say lighter note, but as you spoke about community when coming here, you had your Canadian Tanzanians that helped you connect, and that's a big thing for people moving, especially if you're older and moving with your family, right? A lot of people, hey, do I know people? So I want to ask you in part A and part B on this. One, we spoke a little bit, I have an Irish mentor who's like a father figure to me. And so we spoke a little bit about your Irish roots. And you said there's actually an Irish community here in Kenya, which I would.
You know what? 100 years of an Irish society here in Kenya. 1924 is when the Kenya Irish Society was founded. Can you believe that? 100 years this year.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
Wow. So it's not just here, but it's stability. 100 years mean that it's been okay to be here.
Totally.
100 years. It's something I've noticed about, especially about Kenya and Nairobi. There's so many different ethnicities here and big groups of people that feel comfortable.
Yeah, for sure.
Right, feel comfortable. And I think that's a really big thing. I'll go to part B of this is, how easy or hard is it to join community here and get plugged in for you, your family, etc.?
So, to be frank, it was difficult at the beginning to get plugged in to the Canadian community, right? Because there wasn't, and there isn't, a Canadian Cultural Society. We're starting the Chamber of Commerce now as a way to bring Canadians doing business here together, bring about different changes that we want to see for the community at large, social, but also some of that advice. So this is a good accounting company to go through. This is a good lawyer. This is how to set up your company. There's the Canadian Revenue Authority. How do you work with them and the Kenyan, right? What about double taxation? All those different things are specific to Canada. That's what we want to make easier. I wish I had that when I came, because what you do is you go online or you ask friends and friends, and they're going to give you good, bad, and maybe non-correct responses. So you need to have a community here. So that's what we're building. Friends of friends, and that's just kind of how it comes about, right? Being here and who you meet, and then you find your group, right? One thing here about Kenya is that you have several country clubs and different clubs. And so each club has its own flavor and its own different ethos and different folks that are a part of that club. And so the clubs are a good way to kind of get community and a good family place to spend time. So that's one way that people do it here in Kenya. But then going back to your first point around, feeling comfortable, I think Kenya's done a really, really good job of being a cultural mosaic, kind of like Canada, to say, this is what you look like. This may be where your grandparents are from. But now that you're here, you're Kenyan and you're one of us. And I think that's very special and unique here on the continent. And you see it because the economic activity, the startup scene, the venture capital, the private equity, the funds, they're all here. And that's not because of the bigger economic reason. It's because people want to live here because they feel a part of here. And I was talking to somebody about the Middle East. You have a great 20-year career working in, pick a country, but you can never become someone from that country. Here you can become someone. And umodzi, right? Unity, I think is real. And I'm not really made to feel like a foreigner. If you speak Swahili, you integrate, and you have friends. There's no reason I would be thought of or treated any differently.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing that and letting the people know how easy or hard it is to integrate into a country, because that's something that I think all of us concern ourselves with when we travel. We want to feel like we're part of it. And also, if you develop roots, as you're saying, you're not going to say, no, this shouldn't be planted here in 20 years. You're not really here. So thank you so much for sharing that. And my final question to you, I'll give you two options in order to answer. One, what is your vision, right? Your big, hairy, audacious goal? What's your BHAG, right? What's your vision for yourself? Or who do you want to be? You want to say 10, 15 years. Hey, Adam is this.
Great question. And I think it's still developing, every few months to rethink what's important. And I think that we have challenges here, but we have opportunities. And I think the barometer with which I'll measure myself and what we're doing is how impactful, but how much of that challenge can we solve? There's always going to be another dragon to slay, but it's what are the big things that you're proud of? And so for me, it's been farming, telling my family and friends, this is what we're doing. We have this, we have that, et cetera, et cetera. And I think it's what makes me happy is farming, and I've come to love it. But it's what are the big challenges that we've done over the last 10, 15 years? Did we build 1 million homes? Is it 10,000 homes? Is it 1 million people? Is it this many people, this many kgs? I think it depends on what that barometer is. But at the end of the day, there's a challenge. Did you rise to it?
10,000 is huge, but 1 million homes, that means you'd be housing 4 million people. That is a BHAG.
But that's a drop in the bucket for what we need.
Exactly. For a continent with 1.4 plus billion people.
That's less than 1% of what we need for the next several decades.
Wow. Thank you so much.
No, thank
It
you.
was a pleasure speaking.
Yeah, thanks very much.
My pleasure. So thank you for tuning in to Business and Life Advice with Ataande Advisors. It was a pleasure speaking with Adam. We'll leave probably his LinkedIn or contact information below if you're interested in moving to Kenya, especially if you're Canadian. If you want to join the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, right? Obviously reach out to him, and or if you're looking to invest in Malawi as well. So thank you so much, Adam. Thank you everybody for watching. Have a great day.